Let's see. Hey, Miss Judy, do you have anybody that you need us to pray for?
Jimmy Lawrence is in UAB.
Uh-oh, what's going on with him?
Surgery. I don't know. Dorset just said he was in the hospital and hurt bad. And so we need to pray for him.
Absolutely.
He is bad. Is that what she said?
Yes. Said he's hurting bad.
He's hurting bad. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And Geraldine's daughter had a biopsy day before yesterday. Her lungs collapsed, or one of her lungs collapsed. And yeah, they made her come back to the hospital yesterday morning, and it had inflated itself again. So she's doing as good as she can, I think.
All right. In my Bible class, two of the kids' grandmothers are both struggling with cancer. It's Carla Taylor's grandmother, Mama June, has multiple types of cancer. And then also Elena's grandmother, which is Brandy's mother, has leukemia and has up days and down days.
Oh.
You have David Hendricks?
That's Teresa's husband, right?
Yes.
Remind me what kind of cancer he has.
Lung cancer.
Okay.
Is this somebody we know? I don't
Teresa Hendricks from church.
Oh, yes.
Her husband.
Her husband.
I think she's actually in North Tuscaloosa, but you know who she is.
She went there when Jessica and them went.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Them out. But Margaret's still with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carly, your face looks skinnier.
Oh, well, thank you.
I know. Like, teach us the angle trick you got going here.
I don't know.
Hey,
I've been
Terri,
working on the angle.
You look good.
Thank you.
What, Sherry?
You were talking about the lights. Can you see the light shining off my head?
On your head?
Now tell you how
we
much
can.
light we put in here trying to get rid of the green.
That's so funny. What distracts me is the light on my glasses. So
Sorry, I digress.
Yeah, I know. There's worse things. Kitty Joe, you got anybody? You're on mute. So do you have anybody we need to pray for? He's on the floor.
Gertrude's leukemia is back, and she starts chemo on the 16th.
Who? Gertrude. I don't know Gertrude's last name.
Holman.
She's the individual that a lot of people went together and helped last year build. She basically was living in an unlivable trailer. She has custody of her grandchild, and anyway, church has helped out a whole lot. Billy and Faye Pearson and their family through High Socks for Hopes helped out a lot. Anyway, just a very sweet lady. But her name is Gertrude, and she has leukemia.
Oh.
It has come back. She's had it before and beat it, so it's not good.
Say that last part again, Mama. It's come back what?
And she's got to fight it again, which is a lot harder, I think, than the first time.
Okay.
I have a prayer request too.
Yes, ma'am. Helen.
The girl, she's 16 years old, and she's a long story, but she's like a friend of the lady that I'm studying Bible with, and she's 16 years old, and she's never had any problem, and all of a sudden she started passing out. And so the doctor said that the signal from the brain is not going to her heart, so she's not getting the oxygen, and she passes out.
Ooh.
So they did the procedure on Friday. I don't know. Yeah, I think Friday. And but it's not a permanent fix. They don't know what to do for it. They're trying to help her, keep her from not passing out, but they don't know how to fix it. So please keep her in your prayers, because her mom, she's the only child, and her mom had a lot of miscarriages, lost a lot of kids, and she's the one that she had. So they're really devastated.
What is her name, Helen?
Her name is, the first name is, I'll spell it, V as in victory, A as in apple, R, S as in Sam, H as in my name, and A as in apple. And her last name is Lyon, Leon.
Okay.
Warsha Leon.
Warsha Leon.
Leon.
The Lord knows who she is.
We're good to get Varsha out.
Yeah.
Well, Helen's real name is Vijay Mulaparthi, so she's my identical twin sister. Can you tell?
Okay.
All right, anybody else?
Well, I keep y'all updated on the children in Mississippi. There is a at permanent, what do they call it? Termination of parental rights.
Mhm.
That's scheduled for the end of July. And if that happens, then the 3 children will be put up for adoption and the families are already in place. So
And they're good families that are in place.
one of them is a Christian family.
Mhm.
So
Yep. Well, good. Well, absolutely keep that in there too. Keep the Giles family in your prayers. I know it doesn't get easier, I imagine. All right, Cindy, if you'll go ahead and get us started. Hey, Miss Betty, I saw you come in down there.
Hey,
Do you have anybody we need to pray for?
my sister,
Remind me her first name.
Mary,
Okay. And she has Alzheimer's, correct?
she has Alzheimer's. She's diabetic. She's still in bed. She's been in the hospital for about 3 months now. So, but
And then her son has moved in with her to take care of her, is that right?
they've sent her home with hospice.
Okay,
Mm.
absolutely.
Sorry, Betty.
All right, Cindy, whenever you're ready, if you want to get us started, I usually will mute everyone other than who's saying the prayer just to cut down on some of the extra noise. So if you don't know how to do that, I'm actually doing it for you.
thank you. Will you pray with me, please? Dear Father, holy is your name, and we are so grateful for this opportunity to have a time to share words of wisdom from your word. And we thank you for women like Terri who have helped us get together as sisters to enjoy opening up the Bible and finding out what you would have us to do. Please help those who are taking care of those at the hospital, nursing homes, our first responders. Please help this country heal of COVID so that we can go about as normal a life as possible. We also pray for the people that were mentioned tonight, such as Jimmy Lawrence, who is in a lot of pain and at UAB. And we pray for Geraldine because she has 2 people she loves so much, including her daughter, who is not doing well at all. And then Carla's grandmother and Brandy's mother, both of them battling cancer, and David Hendricks, who's battling cancer, and Ms. Hallman, Gertrude Hallman, whose cancer has returned. None of these are wanted diseases, and none of them want to have to fight this battle, but please help them and help their families as they struggle through it. And then Helen's friend Varsha has a mysterious ailment. Please help the doctors find a permanent solution to this very scary part of her daily existence. Please help Betty's sister Mary, who is receiving hospice care. And we pray for the Giles family. We love them so much and wish we could make things better, but we are so proud of the memories that we all share. Please lift them up and keep them strong. And Father, I personally want to thank you for protecting my family this week. We did have a scary experience, but we're okay and we're thankful for it. Also thankful that there's a chance that the children that we've thought about often in Mississippi may get to have a permanent home, and then our cares and worries will be gone. Thank you, Father, for giving us this wonderful time of study, and thank you for the beautiful weather that we've had, and keeping us safe last night in the storms. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, feel free to unmute yourself, ladies, or I can unmute you. If you don't want to be unmuted, that's quite all right. Tonight we are talking about something that I have struggled with. I think that's one of the things that's kind of how we choose our topics is, you know, what's close to your heart. The topic is, obviously, can God use broken people? So I am going to try to go by my notes so I don't get sidetracked. So I think in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen over where y'all can see the PowerPoint. It'll help me stay focused and help me not be quite so nervous. Anyway, so here we go. If y'all can't see it, be sure to speak up and let me know. It helps if I turn on the PowerPoint. Let's try that first. I even figured out how to make it be full screen. Hey, has anybody talked to Teresa Taylor? I just realized she was not here.
Beach, aren't they?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forget they all go down there together. Ooh, hello. Try again, Terry. Here we go again. All right. So y'all should be able to see my screen. Can you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to turn it to where it gives full screen because I have figured out how to print my notes, which was the problem last time. Let's see if this works. All right. Can y'all see the people in the right-hand side of my screen, or is that just what I can see?
I
Okay.
don't see anything on the right side.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that I did obviously is went in and let's define broken. And obviously we're going to go to Webster's because that's where you go. But looking in these, I went through and kind of picked out some things that can describe people, not just items. So you see the words in red: shattered, damaged, not working properly, made weak, crushed, sorrowful, a broken heart, a broken spirit, not complete, disunited by divorce, separation, desertion of one's parents, broken homes, or a broken family. All right, so obviously we know what it means. So I'm gonna see if it's not letting me scroll past this. Here it goes. All right, so anybody who's not familiar with it, there's a website and there's also a really handy app you can use on your phone. It's called Blue Letter Bible, and it's blueletterbible.org. This has helped me multiple times, but it lets you pull up the Greek and Hebrew, not that I would have any idea what those are, actual old parts of the Bible, but it shows you where each word is used in the Bible. You can click on a particular one and it shows you how many times it's used, and you can pull up where it's used. Just to make sure that if you're searching things, it's just very handy. I did a couple of studies with Jehovah's Witness, and it was extremely helpful, some of the words that they were using. So I did pull up broken, and these were just some different ones that come up. There was different ways that they're used, and there's something over my screen I've got to make go away. So there's different ways that it's used in the Bible, and you can see those here. All right, we're going to go on. If I can figure out how to make it go to my next page. Why is it so slow? Right. Okay, there we go. All right, so can y'all see this still?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone in this room has issues, as we call it. If we dug deep enough in each other's closets, we would find pain, scars, heavy burdens. We allow the guilt, the shame, family issues, health problems, etc. to overwhelm us. We dwell on these things until we feel worthless, useless, and stained. In reality, we are imperfect people living in an imperfect world. The Garden of Eden was the only perfect place. When sin entered the world through Adam and Eve's poor choice, this world was broken. That does not mean that we are not loved or too broken for God to forgive us and to use us to spread his word. Our scars make us stronger and relatable. The world wants to point out our flaws and brokenness. God loves us despite our brokenness, and he heals us. All right, so why does God use broken people or weak people in the Bible? And I've found many studies on this and taken some, there's actually 4 points that I found, and then went through and pulled different examples from the Bible. So why does he use broken or weak people? Well, first, because it makes them relatable. God uses broken people like broken vessels, and he puts them back together again. We are the broken vessels, the weak people, the imperfect, the flawed, the messed up. One of the, it's not on here, but one of the ways I saw it described was they said we're the broken vessel that's put back together, and through our cracks, the Lord shines out. And I thought that was just a neat illustration. So he chooses flawed people in the Bible because that's who we can most identify with. All right, so I have decided has really could have used some medication. He had a death wish. Jonah, in Jonah 1 verses 2 and 3, God's talking to him and he tells him to arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a big ship going to Tarshish. He paid the fare, went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of God. So have you ever felt like you could do something and nobody would know? If you're the only person there, you may feel like you are, that nobody would know what you did. Jonah did not like what God told him to do, and he hated the people of Nineveh, so he tried to hide from God as if he couldn't find him. He didn't want God to save those people. That's a whole nother lesson in itself that I heard that I absolutely loved, and one of these days we're going to have a lesson on those people. But not today. So he ran the other direction. I did pull this up out of curiosity. Teaching kids Bible class, you use a lot of illustrations. So this was a really neat one that helped me to see how far out of his way he was going to try to get far away from Nineveh. So you'll notice the point A on there at Joppa is where he started, and he was supposed to go to B, Nineveh. That was where God told him to go talk to them. So instead of going northeast, he goes far west, or at least that was his goal. So that was just neat to see. So let's see. Stay on your notes, Terry. All right. So have you ever felt like you could do something and nobody would know? If you're the only one there, you might. Jonah did not like what God had told him to do, and he hated the people of Nineveh. He did not want God to save those people, so he ran the other direction. The storm came and Jonah was asleep, and I can imagine the other men on the boat were praying to all of their little g gods, as we call them, that they could think of. Finally, they realized that somebody was missing, that Jonah was down in the bottom and he was asleep. And so they shake him and wake him up and said, you know, what have you done? Who are you? Right here in verses 8 and 9, it says, they said to him, please tell us, for whose cause is this trouble upon us? What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you? So he said to them, I am a Hebrew. I fear the Lord and the God of heaven who made the sea and the dry land. In other words, the real God. All right. And so, hold on, follow your notes, Terry. I have these little arrows that make me follow. So basically the storm is coming and going, and the people were scared because they found out, that, okay, this guy is really, he's upset the real God. And so Jonah tries to talk them into throwing him into the sea, but they feared the Lord. And so the Bible tells us that they keep trying to row against the storm, and then they realized they couldn't. So they prayed to God and asked him, Lord, please don't hold this against us. And so they picked Jonah up and they threw him into the sea, and the sea ceased from raging. They tried, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and so one of the things that I had never thought about is we always focus on the people of Nineveh that he was going to help, but how do you think this affected the men that were in the boat? They were praying to their little g gods, and nothing was happening, and all of a sudden they realized, the Lord that created all of this that we're in is the one who's angry and we've thrown this over and now it has immediately stopped. So it never hit me to today how it probably changed the lives of the men that were on the boat too. So that was just an extra thought I won't charge you for. It says that the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered sacrifice to the Lord and took vows. So I thought that was pretty neat. Next page. All right, so stubborn Jonah. Again, one of these stories that you hear all the time when you're children, but you don't really study it until you're older, I guess. So basically Jonah was in the belly for 3 days before he prayed, or at least before it says. In Jonah 1 verse 17, it says, now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights, period. The very next sentence, which actually is the next chapter, but the next word, it says, then Jonah prayed. So I thought, okay, I think I probably would have prayed a little faster than waiting 3 days and 3 nights. But again, Jonah, he had some issues. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord from his fish's belly and said, I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol, which is hell, I cried, and you heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your billows and your waves passed over me. Then I said, I have been cast out of your sight. Yet I will look again towards your holy temple. The waters surrounded me, even to my soul. The deep closed around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I had never read that. I went down to the moorings of the mountains, which is the bottom. The earth with its bar closed behind me forever. Yet you have brought up my life from the pit. O Lord, my God, when my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer went up to you into your holy temple. Those who regard worthless idols forsake their own mercy. But I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay what I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. So the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. All right, so again, just trying to imagine, the site that this could have possibly been. We see the cartoons when we're little, and there's this sweet little guy sitting inside, holding his candle inside the fish, and it looks nice and neat. But, just to read the descriptions in there that the weeds were wrapped around my head, just really, really makes you think. So Jonah gets a second chance. Going to try this again. Jonah chapter 3. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, arise. All right, hold on. Leanna is trying to come in. I'm going to let her in real quick. I'm going to check and make sure I have not missed anyone else. Bear with me. Hey, Leanna. We are on, no, I'm glad you're here. We're on sharing screen. So we are just now getting started, and we're on our first person that we're talking about. We're talking about, can God use broken people? And our first example is Jonah. So that's where we're at. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen. Nod your head if you can see it. Okay. I love that she nods with her hands too. All right. So he gives him a second chance. And this time when he says, arise and go, Jonah got up and went. So God does not allow us to remain in our sin, and great things continue to happen. We have to turn from our sin and acknowledge him and ask for forgiveness. 1 John 1 and 9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. All right, let me see if I can go to the next one. Come on, little computer. Try again. There we go. No. Okay, yes, that worked. All right, so Jonah preaches and tells the people of Nineveh, look, you've got to change your ways or the Lord's going to destroy you. And then you go on down into verse 10 of chapter 3, and it says, then God saw their works and that they turned from their evil way, and God relented from the disaster that he had said that he would bring upon them, and he did not do it. So here we see more of Jonah's issues. So if any preacher at the end of his sermon had preached, and all 120,000 people that were there repented and, asked for forgiveness, I don't think you could contain the joy of that preacher. But Jonah was a little confused, and he became angry. And so we see over here in Jonah 4 verses 1-3, but it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he became angry. So he prayed to the Lord, Lord, was this not what I said when I was still in my country? Therefore I fled previously to Tarshish, for I know that you are a gracious God and a merciful God, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, one who relents from doing harm. Therefore now, O Lord, please just take my life from me, for it is better to die than live. So that is his first time that he asked God to kill him. Again, I think probably our therapist friends could read a lot into this individual. Hold on, let me let Gayla back in. She must have lost her signal. Let me make sure she makes it. There she is. Hey, Gayla. Just make sure I had to click the right button. All right, so sorry, lost my train of thought for just a second. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so he's asked God to kill him, basically. And I'd love to tell you all that the story is great and rainbows and unicorns from here, but it's just really not. After this, he goes out and he sits on the hill and basically watches the city to see what's going to happen to it. And God, being the loving God he is, creates a plant, it grows up, and it gives him shade. And so great things happen, and Jonah is thankful for it, it says. I think that may even be on my next slide. Hold on, it may not be. Nope, just kidding. It's not on my next slide. It's on my notes. All right, so God gives him this plant, and then the next day, the plant dies. And then he even says it again. And it happened when the sun rose. This is Jonah 4, verse 8. And it happened when the sun arose that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. Then he wished death for himself and said, it is better for me to die than to live. Again, second death wish. We won't even try to overanalyze that, but to focus on the positive things. Yes, this was somebody that was really broken, but how many people were led to Christ because of it, basically? It says that 120,000 people, actually I did not put what verse that is, but I can look that up. At the end of Jonah chapter 4, it says that 120,000 people were saved because of this, and it also mentions their livestock, which I just guess was great. All right, so we're going to go on to our next person. Do y'all have any comments? I feel like I'm talking all. Any comments, anybody, any questions? All right, we're going to keep going. All right, so Rahab, the harlot that lies. Another awesome example of how someone who might not be the most upstanding individual helps people. All right, so after Moses died, the Lord spoke to Joshua and told him that he was going to be leading the children of Israel. And Joshua sends out 2 spies into the city. This is Joshua 2:1-5. And he says, go and view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came to the house of a harlot named Rahab and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, men have come here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country. So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the country. Then the woman who took the 2 men and hid them. So she said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it happened as the gate was being shut, when it was dark, that the men went out. Where the man went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you may overtake them. So we realize that she's lying, but she put them basically in what we would call her attic. But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them in the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order on the roof. And then the men pursued them by the roads, blah, blah, blah. So basically, before she goes up and talks to him, she said, I know that the Lord has given you the land, that the terror of you has fallen on us and all the inhabitants. And so she starts talking about the different things that they have heard about. And she fears the Lord, and she acknowledges that he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. So she asked them, whenever they do come in order to destroy the city, if they will remember her and her mother and her father and brother and sister and all that live in there. So they tell her what to do, to hang this, basically a tassel from her window, and that way they'll know where she's at and they'll be able to not destroy her. So next thing, so she confessed her belief in the existence of the Lord. Yes, she was a harlot. All the things that they talk about that were going on in Jericho, she could have been this could have been no option for her. I realize there's always other options, but she confessed her belief in the Lord Jehovah. She appealed to him for help and showed kindness to the Israelite spies, courageously hiding them, and it's helped them escape. All right, so we are going to Moses. I hate this talking all by myself thing. All right. Helen, Helen, have I said anything wrong yet? Helen is my little Bible scholar.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did
She can actually,
well.
I'm going to brag on her, and she'll just have to be okay with it. But she can actually quote the entire book of Revelation. Is that correct? Have you gotten through the whole book yet?
What is that?
Can't you quote the whole book of Revelation? This is her most favorite book ever. Not this, obviously, but she's just my Bible scholar. Sorry, didn't mean to embarrass you. All right, so we're going to talk about Moses for a little bit, and I'm just going to be okay with the fact that I'm the only one talking.
Okay. You wanna?
All right, so Moses is actually what we're studying on Sunday with my little kids. So it has been fun to study them with him and talk about him going from the basket and how the Lord chose for him to be born to one woman, but that he was raised by another in order to do what the Lord had planned for him. I have a friend she adopted 2 children, and that was how she explained to them that, yes, you were born to another mother, but the Lord chose for you to be raised by me so that the Lord can do great things for you. So I think it was really good that it was really just a deep analogy. So, all right. So Moses is a murderer, and he has speech problems, and he is extremely good at making excuses. So, all right, we've got somebody coming in. Ladies, this is an unnamed one, Galaxy S9. I have a lot of people that I have invited. This one came in a minute ago.
Me. Terry, that's
Okay.
me. Mama's
Okay, well, then
phone
I'm
is
gonna let
about
you
to
in.
die.
Okay, I was just going to warn them to close their eyes for a second. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. All right, well, good. So we're in Exodus 2, and it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown. This is after he's living, obviously, in Pharaoh's house. He goes out, and it says that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and he looked that way. And I put those little parentheses in there. That is not in the Bible, but you just kind of, you look both ways, like, is anybody really watching? It says, and when he saw no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. All right, let's see. If we'll scroll to the next one, go to the next one. There it is. All right, so he runs away. He realizes that Pharaoh knows about him killing the Egyptian, and he runs away to a place of Midian. Where did my notes go? They're not here. All right, well, I know this story. Anyway, so he runs to Midian, and he comes to there are 7 daughters, and I completely forgot who they belong to. Helen, who was their father? I know I'm supposed to know.
Who?
Moses.
Oh, it'll hit me in a minute.
Son and
Jethro?
Yes, Jethro, thank you. All right, so Jethro has 7 daughters, and he ends up helping them to get water for their horses. And when he goes back, he talks to them and says, how did you get back so quickly? He said, there was this individual that helped us, and he said, go get him. And basically he ends up marrying Zipporah, I think is how you say her name. And so this is later on whenever he's out in the field and he sees this bush that's burning. And so he decides he'll go up and look at it. And then that is when God speaks to him from the bush, and it says, take off your shoes because where you are standing is on holy ground. And so, which meant he was in the presence of the Lord. So God starts talking to him and tells him, you are the fella that's going to bring the children out of Egypt. And Moses starts in on his slew of excuses. So at first, in Exodus 3:11, it says, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" God replies, "I will be with you." And then he says in Exodus 3:13, "Well, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the children out of Israel?" And God replies, "I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve the God on this mountain." God gives him some miracles that he can perform with his staff, like turning them into a snake and then picking them up. And then his hand will be leprous and he can put it in his coat and vice versa, it turns back to normal. So he gives them miracles that he can do. So again, he says, well, in verse 13, he says, "Indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they say to me, 'What is his name?' what shall I say to them?'" Like God wouldn't have an answer. So God replies, "I am who I am." And that kind of makes me feel like a parent who has become frustrated with the child that keeps asking questions and keeps talking back. And you're just like, "I am who I am." So anyway, it's one of those straightforward. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. He says, "Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, 'I am has sent you.'" Next page. On fourth excuse. "Oh, my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither nor before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of tongue." And God replies to him in verse 11, "Who has made man's mouth?" In other words, I know you're slow of tongue and I can help you. All right, so finally, and the fifth and last excuse that he comes up with is in verse 13, and he says, "Oh, my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send." So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And look, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. Now you speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you what you shall do. So he shall be your spokesman to the people, and he himself shall be as a mouth for you, and you shall be to him as God. And you shall take this rod in your hand with which you do all the signs." So from all of this, this was Sunday, we were talking to the kids. The main point was to teach them not to come up with excuses of "I can't do this," or reasons I can't do this, but instead to say, "I will try, because I know the Lord is with me." All right, Samaritan woman. Feel free to jump in here anytime anybody wants to say something. All right, so the Samaritan woman was married 4 times, and she was living with a man that she was not married to, which we all know is not what we're supposed to do. All right, so this is in John 4. It starts in verses 7 through 26. "A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, 'Give me a drink,' for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, 'How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans.' Jesus answered and said to her, 'If you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, "Give me a drink," you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water.' The woman said to him, 'Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where do you then get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?' Jesus answered and said to her, 'Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life.' The woman said to him, 'Sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw.' Jesus said to her, 'Go call your husband and come here.'" Bear with me just a second. Okay, fixed it. All right, so the woman said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "Well, you've said well, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands." Ooh, I was wrong. She had been married 4 times. I said 4, sorry. "For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. in that you spoke truly. The woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worship on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place that we ought to worship. Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. And the woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you are he. I can only imagine what came across that woman's face when he said that. She's to realize that the person that you've been waiting for is actually sitting in front of you and talking to you. I did look a couple of things up about this to see why it was such a big deal for Samaritans to speak to Jews. And basically, from what I gathered, Samaritans were what they would call a half-breed. They, let's see, let me find exactly how to say that politically correct. Oh, I thought I put it in my notes. But basically, they had the Hebrews had married somebody else, and they were of two different tribes. And whenever they believed it was sort of an edited version of Christianity and Jewish, and so they believed they had to go to a certain place and worship, and Jews believed they had to go there. So that was why they were talking about, well, should I worship on this hill or on this hill? Anyway, so it was a fascinating little study, and I wish my notes had showed up. They're not there. So, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed in, all right, so we're going down to find out what happened after she leaves. John 4:39 and 42 through 42, it says, and many of the Samaritans of that city believed in him because of the word that the woman who testified. He told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans had come to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there for 2 more days. So because of her, Jesus comes and stays 2 more days, and many more believe because of his own word. And then they said to the woman, now we believe, not because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard him, and we know that this indeed is Christ, the Savior of the world. So someone who was not the ideal Christian was able to bring Jesus to all of them. So just another great example. Did I hear somebody say something, or am I hearing things?
Yeah, it was me, Terry.
Yes, Helen, go ahead.
No, I mean, about the Samaritans, you're right. They're like a mixed breed. And then they, when, if I'm correct, in Nehemiah, when he goes to build a temple, they try to hinder the work, and they want to help him. They want to help him build a temple, but Nehemiah does not let them to do it. So that's when the actual, they're not very good ties to begin with, but then that animosity gets even worse. And then because they were not allowed to the temple, so they start worshiping at this other mountain that she talks about. So.
Okay. Well, that makes much more sense. Thank you. All right, so another character that we're all very familiar with is David. He is called a man after God's own heart, but he was also an adulterer and a murderer. So David's one of those people in the Bible. It calls him a man after God's own heart in 1 Samuel when it's describing who that they should get to be the king after Saul. It says, but now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart, and that the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept which the Lord commanded thee. He's talking to Samuel. And so later Samuel anoints him in 1 Samuel 16, but he didn't immediately take the throne. The first big thing that you think of in my mind is David and Goliath. And how he was the hero there, and he defeated Goliath. But he was quick to give God the credit for it and said, that the Lord is on my side, and he did this, and he didn't take the credit for himself. Later, Saul becomes jealous of David and tries to kill him on like a bazillion occasions. And even when David could have killed him, he didn't because he was one of God's anointed. David and Jonathan, which is Saul's son, become best friends. And then later, both Saul and Jonathan die in battle, and that's in 1 Samuel 31. So on to 2 Samuel 11. David was supposed to be out at war with all of his other men, but he remained at the palace for some reason, and he sees a young woman bathing and lusts over, and then he asks who she is. In 2 Samuel 11 and verse 3, and they answer and say, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Wife of. That was all he should have heard. But he didn't let it go, and we know the story, and he ends up sending for her, and they sleep together, and she gets pregnant, and then she tells him she's pregnant, and he tries to get Uriah, her husband, to come home and spend the night so he can think that he was the one that made her pregnant. But Uriah will not go in. He's too much of a soldier, and so he finally, sin leads to sin, leads to another sin, and he decides to have him killed. So because of David's lust that led to adultery, that led to murder, multiple things are brought on David's family, and he, obviously did great things, but because of the choices that he made, horrible things happened. We're not going to get into all of it, but basically Nathan rebukes him here in, what chapter am I in? 2 Samuel 11. I don't know. This says 12. Anyways, I think that's chapter 12. The Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, there were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arm. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come to him. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come to him. David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for the lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. Then Nathan said to David, you are the man. And that's when David realized what he was talking about. And he says, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, the Lord has taken, this is in verse 13, the Lord has taken away your sin, and you are not going to die. But because by doing this, you have shown utter contempt for the Lord, the son born to you will die. So because of his poor choices, David's family suffers many more tragedies. All of our actions have consequences. We're not going to get into Tamar and the brother. If you're on our Lady's Bible devotional thing, we talked about that last night. So I'm going to flip on over, and we're going to get to one of my favorite individuals, Peter. Bless, if there was a Terri in the Bible, this was her. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I just meant the outspoken, impulsive, rooster hating, Lord denying, that thing. So Peter had lots of great qualities. Obviously, he was one of the apostles that the Lord chose, so he saw great things in him. But a lot of times Peter said things that he shouldn't, impulsively. He hated silence, and it even talks about that when they're up in the during the transcending, or what's the word? I think that was the right word. Anyway, he hated transfiguration. There we go. So it's trans something. So he hated quiet. I thought, okay, I totally relate to this guy. So he was guilty of having a lack of faith. This was whenever Jesus starts walking out on the water. And this is in Matthew 14, starting in verse 28 through 31. Anybody else want to read? Okay, I'll read it. All right, verse 28.
I'll read it.
Okay, go ahead.
And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Thank you, Helen. I always just wanted to pat him on his back and be like, you're the only one that got out of the boat, though. You know, I mean, he had enough faith that he said, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you. You know, all the other 11 or however many were actually in the boat just sat there like, so I kind of wanted to just pat him on his back and go, all right, good job, guy. But, you know, he did have little faith, as Jesus said, you know. Let's see, blah, 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 my notes. How many times do we walk towards something that seems right, only to stumble over our own feet, which is the world, when all we have to do is look up? He doesn't just put his hand out when we're in trouble. He always has his hand out for us to walk with him. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Peter was told by the Lord that he was going to deny him, and Peter honestly didn't think that he would. Hold on, let me figure out what's going on. I heard a chime too. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. Oh, y'all make me chuckle. All right, so I don't know what I did. Go back. Who is flushing a pond? Gayla, you're the only one not muted. Gayla, mute your screen. All right, there we go. All right. All right. So Peter was told by the Lord that he would deny him. And I honestly do believe that Peter thought there was no way on God's green earth I would ever deny you, Lord. And so when he said, Matthew 26 and verse 34, it says, "Assuredly I say to you that this night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. All right. And scroll on down to verse 69 of chapter 26. It says, "Now Peter sat outside in the courtyard." So this is after they've taken Jesus, they've arrested him. He's going to go before the Sanhedrin, I believe that's what they call it. And so Peter's sitting outside in the courtyard. And a servant girl came to him saying, "You also were with Jesus of Galilee." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you are saying." And when he had gone out of the way, out to the gateway, another girl saw him and said to those who were there, "This fellow also was with Jesus of Nazareth." But again he denied with an oath, "I do not know that man." And a little later, those who stood by came up and said to Peter, "Surely you are one of them, for your speech betrays you." Then he began to curse and swear, saying, "I do not know the man." Immediately a rooster crowed. And Peter remembered the words of Jesus, who had said to him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. So he went out and wept bitterly. All right, so have you ever been around somebody who was not a Christian and you could tell by the way that they were talking or the way that they were acting or maybe the jokes that they were telling? And you know you probably should say something, but you don't because you just feel awkward. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion for what it's worth, that's just like denying Christ. And so I think probably for the rest of his life, whenever Peter heard a rooster, he was reminded that, you know, I'm the Lord. And, you know, that was just a constant reminder. So I kind of feel like I need a little rooster that sits on top of my computer sometimes, or maybe draw a picture of one on my hand. Just to remind you that every day you're supposed to stand up for God. All right, impulsive. This was really funny. I'd never read this part before. So this is after Jesus is raised from the dead, and the men are out and they're fishing all night and they don't catch anything. And it even says, so I forget the actual quote. He was like, "I'm gonna go fishing." And so I mean it just sounded so Peter-ish. And so he goes out there and they fish all night and they don't catch anything, and they're coming back and they're close to shore. It says like 200 cubits from shore. And someone says, "Did you catch anything?" And they say, "Well, no." And he said, "Well, throw your nets on the other side." And they throw their nets down and it's full. And John 21 verses 1 through 14, it actually says there in verse 7, therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. Now, when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. So you can just see this individual that's just, supposed to be holding the nets up, all of a sudden just jumps in the water and swims to Jesus. And it says that the rest of them just basically sit in the boat and, drive it on over there, because it was only 200 more cubits. He was impulsive. So just another wonderful characteristic of Peter. But he also was the first to confess that Jesus was the Christ. So Matthew 16, 13 through 16. Let me make sure this isn't somebody trying to get in. Nope. All right. Be the first. Matthew 16, 13 through 16. So when Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, who do men say that I am? Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? So they said, some say John the Baptist, some Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And he said to them, but who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. So he had confidence even, I'm going to kind of scroll through these because I think, oh, wow, it's 8 o'clock. All right, so he had confidence even when it meant standing up to Jesus. So Jesus starts to predict his death. And basically, he just tells him, no, Lord, this can't be. I'm not going to try to paraphrase and rewrite the Bible. But then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, the Lord, saying, far be it from you, Lord, this shall not happen to you. And exclamation point. But he turned to Peter and said, get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. So he was only worried about what was going to happen right then. And he stood up for what he believed, and he was confident, even if it means standing up to Jesus. So Jesus restores Peter. I'm going to skip through this. This was when Jesus asked him 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And we have to be reminded that, he also denied Christ 3 times. So here we go. We're on to number 2. Finally, it only took an hour to get to number 2. The rest of this is short. So 1, why does God use broken or weak people? Because they're relatable. 2, because of our need. God chooses flawed people because their flaws make them see that they have a need for the Savior. Number 3 is because it gives them no reason to boast. They have to rely on grace. If God had chosen a skilled leader to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt, he may have assumed the credit for himself and not given God the glory. So he chose Moses. In Ephesians 2:9, it says, not a result of work, so that no one may boast. So it can't be something that you did that people go, oh, well, Terry is just such a great speaker. Clearly that's why she did this tonight. No. So when you're flawed, there's no question that it was God who did the work through you and not you your own. All right. This is another one that hits home with me. No special qualifications needed to teach people about Christ. God chooses and uses broken people to show us that he can equip anyone to do his work. God doesn't need us to be capable. He just needs us to be available. Okay, this is a fun list when I was searching for these things, and y'all just have to appreciate some of them with me. I did not go through here and make sure all of them were true, but it was, if God can use these people, certainly he can use me. And all of the ones that I have read were completely true. And if you find something that's not, please do tell me. But I'm going to go through them, and you'll just have to appreciate it with me. If God can use these people, he can certainly use me and you. After all, Noah was a drunk. We know that's true. Abraham, he got drunk after he got off the boat, and then he just laid around naked. So Noah was a drunk. Abraham was too old. Isaac was a daydreamer. Jacob was a liar. Leah was ugly. That was my question mark. I don't know if she was really ugly or if Rachel was just prettier. Joseph was abused. Moses had a stuttering problem. Gideon was afraid. Samson had long hair and was a womanizer. Rahab was a prostitute. Jeremiah was too young. David was an adulterer, not to mention a murderer. Elijah was suicidal. I really think we should put Jonah in there with the suicidal part. Isaiah preached naked. Jonah ran from God. Naomi was a widow. Job went bankrupt. John the Baptist ate bugs. Andrew lived in the shadow of his big brother. Peter denied Christ. All the disciples fell asleep while praying and ran away when Jesus really needed them. Martha worried about everything. The Samaritan woman was divorced more than once. Mary Magdalene was demon-possessed. Zacchaeus was too small. Timothy had an ulcer. Paul was a Christian killer. And Lazarus was dead. So if the Lord can use all of those people, he can use me. All right, so I have one more. Do you have any comments? Have I bored you to death talking for a solid hour? All right. All right, so I have one more story. I'm just going to leave it on the screen if that's okay with y'all. All right, so I'm going to tell you a story about a young lady. I'm not going to call her by name because we're not going to embarrass her or her family. But she grew up in a typical home, siblings, both parents living together, going to church whenever the doors were open. She knew right from wrong, but more often than not, she chose to push her boundaries. She wanted to see how close she could get to fire without being burned. Sadly, she got many scars because of this habit. Her mother would try over and over to steer her back to the safer path, but somehow she just took the wrong roads. She was baptized around the age of 12 when other friends were doing that, and it seemed like it was a good thing to do. Nothing really changed inside her, though. She grew older and made more poor choices, often involving boys, driving, and alcohol. Her family was humiliated, but tried to steer her back. Time passed, and she went to college and made some good choices and some bad. She went to school sometimes, and other times she didn't. She went to church when she was supposed to, but it was basically for attendance. She met an individual that interested her and was certainly not from the cookie cutter her mother had told her to look for. Drugs, alcohol, divorced multiple times, multiple children, but all of his tattoos were spelled correctly. Clearly, this young girl could make him better. Years went by, and she allowed this relationship to take her down some really dark roads. She lost the relationship with her family because they tried to make her see what she was doing. She stopped going to church because they could see what she was doing and tried to show her that her ways were not healthy and what God had taught. After many hard years, she separated from this winning individual, and she had dated and had been engaged to, but thankfully never married. She found an outstanding individual that had grown up in a similar home to her, going to the same type of church that she had. They hit it off and got married. She still struggled with her poor choices and brought those into her new marriage. There was alcohol, cigarettes, obsession with appearance, and sex. There were tough times, but everybody had those in marriage, right? Years later, she made more poor choices that were followed by more poor choices. This time it affected her husband and her children. It looked like she would lose everything. Her husband took the children, and she moved in with her parents. She had nowhere else to go. She had lost everything. Her husband, her children, her homes, her reputation, everything. For the first time in her life, she was truly broken. Maybe shattered was a better description. All of the other times in her past, she thought that she was broken, were really just preparing her for that day. There was an emptiness inside her chest that could not be filled. Tears, screams, nightmares, emptiness, sleepless nights. It was not until one morning when she was sitting on her parents' porch when she turned it all over. She always tried to fix things on her own. She was independent, did I mention? God was sort of like a Santa Claus. You turn your list in and he'll give you some of the things on your list. Sometimes you remember to send a thank you note, but most of the time you were just asking for things. She finally had nothing left. She realized she really was not alone. God had never left her. She was the one that had closed the door. By the grace of God, countless empty days, answered prayers, hours in the Bible, counseling, and completely turning herself over to God's will, her life started to turn around. She was given a second chance, or more like a 10 millionth chance at life. Her marriage, though it took years, was restored, and her family was able to be in one home. She never knew how much her husband loved her until then. He was able to forgive the cardinal sin. Today, she uses her love for the Lord to teach children's Bible class, and she has a ladies group that she messes with about real-life applications and different encouragement. She is teaching this ladies' Bible class tonight. The young girl is me. I am broken and I have scars that are on the inside and out. I am forgiven. I am loved by God, and He has forgiven me. I'm a vessel that was broken and God put back together. I now carry his word in my heart and try to tell as many people as I can about his love. I miss opportunities and I mess up, but he uses me. God does not call the equipped, he equips the called. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Oh, I lied. I am going to give you these couple of ran across that were some really good ones for people who or feel like you're broken. I can send you these if you're interested. But Isaiah 43 verse 2, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. Psalms 34 and 18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalms 147 verse 3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Luke 4:18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recover the sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed. Isaiah 41 verse 10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And there's a few more, and I don't know that my voice is going to make it to the rest of them. But there's just some really, really great encouragements, and anybody who needs them, I will write them down and send them to you. But they were just great encouragement to me. I'm going to turn my screen around. So that was a hard lesson to get out, but I appreciate y'all being so quiet. Not really. And making me talk all the way through it. But God has used me in so many different ways, and I'm extremely thankful for the opportunities that I have had. I've been able to help people that have gone through horrible circumstances, and I know that that's one reason that God helped me through it, was to help other people that come in similar circumstances. So don't ever feel like that you're not worth it or you can't do it because there's too many skeletons. I promise you we all have skeletons. But use those opportunities to help somebody else who's going through. I love your boys, Gayla. It's okay. They can holler. So do y'all have anything that you want to add or throw rocks at me? Mama, I don't expect you to talk. I love you.
I think I'm unmuted.
You are.
You did a great class, Carrie.
Thank you. I feel like
I read a book sometime about God using broken pots. And that's pretty much what it said.
Yeah.
But he uses those of us that make ourselves available. And that's what we have to do.
Yes, ma'am. I was very hesitant to share my story for fear of embarrassing John. But I know that the Lord has helped us all through this, and that y'all won't hold it over his head. So I love you all.
We love you.
Yes, ma'am. Cindy.
That, of course, it was so personal, and the way that you brought us in by showing us the not characters, but the real people who are in the Bible, who have gone through trying times, many of their own creation, and then bringing us to your story. It was very humbling, and it was a wonderful thing that you did. And when we face ourselves in the mirror, and identify our strengths and our weaknesses, then turn our lives around and embrace those weaknesses as stepping stones, hurdles to get us to the next level, as you have done. It encourages a new generation. And I couldn't love you anymore, and you know that. You amaze me every day. And I thank you for sharing with us, because I know it hurts. But at the same time, you have to reach back as part of your tribute to God and pull someone else up. Every suffering time that we've had in our lives, if we haven't caused it, then we still learn from it. And we have to reach back and pull somebody up, just like you said. And sometimes I shake my head when I read about some of our Bible people. Like, how in the world did you do what you did when God had spoken straight to you? I think we're too hard on people.
Yeah.
And
The book that I'm reading right now, that the Gods at War, talking about how you let different things take over your heart. It's so true. Go ahead, Leanna. Leanna, I think you're still muted. There you go.
Okay, I am sorry. Okay. I know that you can't reach some people unless they know you've been there. And I mean, I know that they won't listen to somebody who they think has always done it right in their eyes. You know, none of us have done it right.
No.
You know, some, I guess, to the degree, different degrees than others, but you know, you might look at somebody and think, oh, they're just, I wish I were like them and all, but everybody has a story, and it's the people who are willing to share their stories who can reach people who are so far away. They look at them and think, like, I admire you so much for doing that, because it just, I don't know, you're the one people hear, they're going to listen to, and God knows that. That's the reason you're where you are. We're all valuable. You are very valuable to Him because of what you do for others. You certainly do that for me.
Thank
I
you,
love
Leanna.
you bunches.
I love you. Sherry.
I think all of these stories about people, everybody that knows me knows I love character stories out of the Bible. I think they're all there to tell us we're all imperfect and we all mess up big time. Not, hey, I didn't read but 10 verses today, not that kind of thing. I mean, mess up big time. All these people did. I mean, you know, the ones we just read about. But for David to be a murderer and say that God to call him a man after God's own heart tells us that no matter what we've done with God, we have hope.
Yes.
And I appreciate your lesson because it reminds us that we're all human, but that we all can have that hope.
Yeah. And I have to be careful too not to call them characters, because they were real people.
Yeah, they were. True.
Well, thank y'all for the encouragement. Y'all are awesome sisters, and I appreciate you being here with us.
Love you. Love you, girl.
I love you. Let me look to see who's speaking next week. Bear with me just a second. Ladies Bible class. Teresa Taylor is speaking next week. So she'll be here on Thursday at 7:00. And I thank you so much for being here and not throwing rocks at me.
Love you.
I love y'all.
Love you.
Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, Sherry.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Love you. Bye-bye. Love you, sweetie.
Love you too.